Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. I have no idea where to start, but here I go. We had a family restaurant which was set up by my granddad, and then my dad took control of it after my granddad announced his retirement. I was the only kid of my parents, and my granddad loved me beyond limits. He would buy me anything I would ask for and would take me to the amusement parks. I was so attached to my granddad. My parents were also very loving, and I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. My granddad died of a heart attack when I was around 15 years old, and that was a huge trauma for me. I felt like my world had shattered down and I had no one by my side. My parents kept me close and were always by my side, but nothing could make me feel better. It took a couple of months for me to come back to normal routine. Things got better with time and I started coming back to life. I missed my granddad so much, but of course, all I could do was move on. It was my first year at university when I started dating my husband, and that changed my world. I felt fulfilled and happy once again. He was the most loving and caring person I had ever come across. We vibed so well and had built such an amazing understanding, that too in a very short period. I could not wait to introduce him to my parents. I was having dinner with my parents when I told them that I was dating a guy and wanted them to meet him. They did not seem glad, and I asked if there was a problem. My dad told me that I was supposed to focus on my studies, as I was the one who was going to take ahead the legacy of the hotel my granddad had established. I told them that I was focused enough, and how could they expect me to stay away from relationships as I was going to marry someday, and that was part of their life. My parents did not speak anything else after that. I and my husband graduated, and he started looking for a job while I joined my dad in the business. My husband was able to land a well paying job and proposed to me after some time. I was the happiest person on earth that day. When I told my parents about our engagement, they could not believe it. My mom said that they were not going to accept my engagement and I had to break up with my husband. When I asked them their problem, they said that my husband was just after my property and business. I knew my granddad had gifted me two houses, but my husband did not know anything about them at that time. All he knew was that I was going to run a family hotel and he was least interested in it. I told my parents that they were imagining things and had to accept my engagement. My parents were not ready to accept the engagement at any cost and told me that I could not get involved with anyone without their approval, as they could judge people better. I told them that I was not going to take a step back and was planning to marry my husband in a couple of months. My parents did their best to brainwash me, but I did not listen to them. One day, my dad told me that if I did not break the engagement, he was going to disown me and deprive me of his will. I told him that I did not care at all and left the house after a couple of days. I went to my aunt's place, who was literally my best friend. I told her the whole situation. She was the only one who supported me. Me and my husband got married, but my parents never contacted me after that. A year later, my husband got transferred to another state and we had to move. I had already given both the houses I owned for rent and was getting enough money. We moved to that state and it was a fresh start. I took a loan and started my own small cafe, which flourished with every passing day while my husband stuck to his job. Now, 11 years later, I have three branches of my cafe, and we are parents to two handsome sons. My life is beautiful in every way. My aunt called me 2 days back and told me that my parents want to see me and reconcile. I told her that I was never going to see them and she could tell them to stay away. My aunt also told me that they wanted my number, but she did not give it to them. My husband came back from the office yesterday and told me that my dad had called him. My husband told me that my dad took his number from the company's helpline, as he knew where my husband worked. He also told me that my parents want my help, and I already knew that there was something they wanted because they would never contact me otherwise. I have told my husband to avoid their calls from next on. So my parents kept bothering my aunt and asking her to give them my number, but she did not. My husband also did not attend their calls. My dad texted me on Facebook, and it was a huge paragraph. He told me that no matter what happens, a family is a family and only death could do us apart. He also said that there was no day he did not miss me and wanted to reconcile, but his ego did not let him. He mentioned how my mother suffered the separation, but never talked about it. I replied and just asked what he wanted. My dad sort of got hurt by my reply as I could hear him yell in the next text. He said that families are not about just wanting something from each other, and it was something beyond that. He also told me that I had grown mean over time, and that made me laugh because they just turned me into someone mean. He said that even if he wanted something, it was because family members are the ones who help each other in their time of need. I told him that I had no help for him and they should not contact me again. I do not know what is wrong with them. Also, I have asked my aunt to find out what had made them contact me after a decade. As my parents were not leaving us alone, I told my aunt that I was going to see them at her place, as I did not want to invite them to mine. I traveled back and stayed at my aunt's place. My aunt had informed my parents that I was coming back and they could see me at her place. They still did not have my number, which was a blessing as they would call my aunt every 10 minutes. I was there for just 2 days. My parents came to see me the day I arrived, and both of them just could not get enough of me. My dad hugged me with all his might, and my mom kept kissing my forehead. They told me that they missed me so much and their life never got on track after I had left. My dad told me that he could not sleep peacefully, thinking that I was most beloved to my granddad and he had kicked me out. I asked them why they did not reconcile then, and they had no answer to my question. My dad then told my aunt that they wanted to talk to me in privacy, so she left the lounge. My dad told me that they had taken a loan to expand their business, but they had almost gone bankrupt as the business failed drastically. They had to sell their home and other property to repay the loan. As the business kept coming down, they had decided to sell the hotel too. My mom said that they had no place to live, as they could not even afford the rent. They were planning to sell the hotel and start a home-based bakery. I told them that I knew they wanted something, as they would never contact me otherwise. My mom almost begged me to let them live in one of my houses until they were settled down. She said that they would even pay for rent when their bakery will start earning. I kept listening to them and then told them that both of the houses were occupied, so they could not stay there. My mom asked me if I could get the tenants out, and I told her I was never going to do that. I told them that they had to manage by themselves, and I would like to stay NC like before. I came back, but my mom and dad were not convinced. They kept bothering my aunt, but she did not let them know my number or address. My dad kept texting me on Facebook and reminding me that they were my responsibility. I did not reply to him at all and then blocked them on Facebook. My dad called my husband and told him the whole story. He cried on the call and told my husband that they had nowhere to go, so I should be kind to them. My husband told me that I should be a bit lenient and help them in some way, as no matter what they had done, they were still my parents. I told him that they were just being hit by karma and had to reap what they sowed. I called my dad from my husband's phone and told him that if he tried to contact us again, I was going to call the cops. I hope they stay away from me and my family because I am never going to allow them back in my life. NTA, OP's parents do not deserve her support or help, as they were the ones who kicked their only daughter out of the house just because she wanted to get married to someone of her choice. I do not get people who commented that OP was being a bit too harsh. Like, are you guys serious? OP had to manage all by herself when her family was alive and could help. Also, where were they for 11 years? Such a-hole parents, like, wow, you loved your daughter and missed her, but never contacted her until you guys went penniless. I mean, why do parents do this? They acted like they doubted OP's husband for being interested in her property, but we all now know who actually wanted the property. Pathetic people. My dad died when I was 7 years old. My mom remarried when I was 9. I'm now 16. My mom's husband, which is what I call him because I do not feel he deserves the title of stepdad or dad, came into the relationship with some clear jealousy. He told my mom to take down all the photos of my dad in our house, bringing up that it felt like dad's house versus his, even though mom and I had moved prior to their marriage and after my dad died. So it was never my dad's house. He then made a big deal out of me having so many photos of my family and my parents in my room. I told him I liked looking at them and I liked having the memories near. He said I could put photos of my dad away so he wasn't intruding on our family. I told him I didn't like him. I was 9, and he wasn't going to take my dad from me. He kicked my grandparents aka Dad's parents, out of our house when I was 10 because they brought me some childhood photos of Dad. He went crazy saying that he didn't want photos of that man in his house. I never did forgive him for that. He told me to stop bringing up my dad. One time, Mom and I were talking about Dad on his birthday, and he said it was disrespectful and he didn't want to feel like he was competing with a ghost. My mom ended the conversation and she apologized to him, but I was pissed off at him more than anything. He was just such an ass to friends of our family who knew my dad. Anytime someone commented that I was getting more like him, he would scowl at them and tell them to move the conversation along because talking about a dead man was uncomfortable for most people. He used the line once that he was the only dad I ever had, and I told him that was not true, and he was never going to be worthy of being my dad. Anyway, that's a lot of background, but not all, since I don't have unlimited typing space. My mom's birthday was Saturday, and her husband threw her a party. Midway through, he gives me a gift. Inside was a photo of himself that he wanted me to put in my room and adoption papers. I tossed the adoption papers in the trash. He saw what I did, which led him to make a comment about not being able to toss away the truth. I got mad so fast. I told him to get over himself, that his jealousy and insecurity was not my problem, and I would never let him legally become my father, that I didn't even want him married to my mom, and he was a disgusting a-hole. Everyone heard what I said. He's still furious. My mom was upset by his anger. Almost everyone left after I yelled. AITA? NTA, why is your mom still with a man that checks notes, bullies her kid for having pictures of their late dad in the house, handles his insecurities over competing with a ghost by lashing out like a toddler that's denied a sweet, uses the concept of adoption as an attempt to erase the memory of a dead man? Any one of these things would be ridiculous on their own. Together, they're like an extra drizzle of feces on top of a crap pastry. NTA, your mother's husband expects everyone to stop loving your dad because he died? I would have thought the adoption papers were a wonderful, loving gesture had I not read the history leading up to it. He is trying to erase your dad's memory. No reason your mom can't still have love for your father and also love her current husband for who he is. It's different love because they are different people. He doesn't seem to get this, and you've had enough. So I, 27 female, am getting married to my fiance, 27 male, in a little under 3 weeks. Everything has been going amazing with the planning, and I'm ecstatic for the day. My best friend, Cassie, whom I've been friends with since we were 10 years old, is my maid of honor. She is truly one of the sweetest people I've ever met and has stuck with me through everything. She's been the biggest help in planning this whole ordeal, and I wouldn't trade her for the world. However, I've never been the biggest fan of her girlfriend, Sophie. I always show her respect and try to include her in things, but she's a huge introvert, and sometimes it can come off as disrespect in return. Cassie's own words. But they always seem to be very happy together, so I hope she warms up to me a little in time. They've only been together for a little over a year and a half. Several days ago, Sophie approached me asking me if I'd be okay if she proposed during my reception. She claimed it would be a great way for Cassie and I to bond more, having our weddings linked and all of that. Not that we need any more time to bond, she's already my other half. I love Cassie to death, but I'd never allow that for anyone. I shut the idea down immediately, and Sophie got all pissy with me and left. She said something along the lines of, I don't need your permission anyway, and walked out the door. This made me fearful that she'd attempt it anyway, so I went to Cassie. Needless to say, Cassie was mad. I never really see her get angry, but she was livid. She apologized profusely and said that she couldn't believe Sophie would ever think of doing something like that. And that was the end of our conversation. However, 2 days ago, I got another call from Sophie berating me for spoiling her plan to propose and was informed that Cassie would be attending the wedding by herself and is currently not speaking to her. I was concerned that wasn't the entire story. And so I called Cassie. She was a mess. Said she was staying with her parents right now and disinvited Sophie as her +1 because she was scared Sophie would have proposed anyway, given the chance, and she didn't want to ruin my wedding. I told her to come stay with me for a while instead, and she showed up several hours later, still a complete mess. She said that her and Sophie had a huge fight and she was reconsidering whether or not she wanted to stay in this relationship. According to Cassie, these huge fights are a common occurrence. I feel awful for ruining her proposal and potentially ruining her relationship. Cassie has been picking herself up in front of me and continuing to be great with the last minute to dos, but I've caught her crying while I'm not around. I love her and I don't want her to resent me for this, so I need to know. AITA? And is there anything I can do to fix this? NTA, proposing at someone else's wedding is never a good idea, and you were right to tell her you didn't want her to. Sophie's reaction was way out of line, and I don't blame you for going to Cassie to ensure it didn't happen anyway. The fights they've been having are on them, including this one. If Sophie can't stay stable in the relationship, that was never on you. Being the catalyst argument that split them up, I could see why you're feeling a bit guilty, but the last straw is never the only straw. It was going to happen sooner or later. At least now Cassie can move on to a healthier partner and relationship, and she has her best friend to help her through it. NTA, OP. If these big fights are a common occurrence, something is potentially very wrong with that relationship. You saying no to allowing a high-pressure public proposal is not going to be what ends it. It'll be Sophie's behavior and their incompatibility. I know your wedding is coming. Just try being there for Cassie when you can and offer to listen when she needs. You guys are besties. You'll make it through this. Congratulations on your upcoming nuptials.